Hello Garden How to friends. Today I want to talk to you about excessive planting. Excessive planting and then appropriately excessive harvesting. We do overplant. We plant too much stuff and then we don't know what to do with the harvest. That's what happens in this community garden where I'm standing right now. That's what I have observed what other people do, and I failed myself too. I overplanted certain crops, and then what we do, we dump the fruits of our labor. We dump the harvest that was hardly produced by our fertile land that we fertilize it all the time, that we trying to enhance all the time. That's what we spend all of our efforts trying to improve our soil. And then we don't use this nutritious soil effectively. I saw people overplanting tomatoes, zucchini, pumpkins, Swiss chard, kale. I have overplanted too much lettuce and then dill as well. So I'm with you guys. But how we can improve our experience? How can we satisfy our need in the food unless you grow too much on purpose so that the excess of the harvest know in advance, or you want to donate the excessive harvest on purpose? Then the overplanting makes sense. But what I have observed from this year experience, delicious, juicy, produced fruits were dumped into the compost pile. I'll show you the photos of the crops that were dropped into the compost pile. When we plant, we don't know how much this particular crop will produce. But do we? When we plant the same crop year over year over year, we already learn from our experience how much one plant might produce. Of course, I know there are also the weather factors involved. But when we know our soil, we kind of already get a handle on what we deal with. And then I think it's also possible to expect how much one particular plant will produce on average. Say one tomato plant, how much it might produce. Unless you are experimenting with horticulture, unless you really experiment with varieties of the tomato, you select one type that you know will produce good results so that you will have plenty of tomatoes to eat over the season and might be enough supply to make canning of the tomatoes. You plant, say, 6 tomato plants, and then each one will produce, say, 2 kilos of tomatoes. 5 plants multiplied by 2 kilos, 10 kilos. Would that be enough for you? Okay, I'm throwing out like hypothetical figures. It's not necessary that they play exact as I said, but this is the idea that I'm trying to work with you guys, trying to get your input. What do you think about this? How many plants you would set in your plot so that there will be enough harvest for you? so that there is no waste. Listen, in the meanwhile, they have hungry people who do not have enough food. We don't have to import our harvest to Africa to feed Africans. We can look around and find homeless and hungry people right here in our area where we live. So why don't we really consciously plant our own food? Why don't we set ourselves a goal to have certain amount of the particular crops in advance? Say my family likes tomatoes, peppers, eggplants. They would like to eat salads, say lettuces. They love to add parsley and dill to the daily dishes. And that's pretty much enough. Say that's quite sufficient enough for the family to live over the season. So then let's count ahead and see how much we have to plant each of these variety. Okay. For example, dill. I have planted 2 rows of dill on a good fertile soil. On a plot like this, just 2 rows, 4 feet long. When it started to grow, I could not cut all of the dill in time and consume the same time. Okay, I have frozen some of it and I pretty much filled up the freezer with the dill so that there is enough dill for the whole winter long. But the rest started to overgrow and I let it go. As a result, I dumped the rest of my dill into the compost pile. This is not why we do grow food. This is not why we work hard on our gardens. I would rather plant different varieties of the crops, not 2 rows of the dill, but say half of a row of the dill on the same plot and on the same fertile soil, which is producing abundantly already. And then I would add other varieties of the edible plants. Say I would add 2 plants of kale, 2 plants of Swiss chard. Oh, don't ask me about Swiss chard. Swiss chard is overly produced. I couldn't handle the amount of the Swiss chard that was produced from 10 plants. Okay, 10 plants, that's too much. Unless your soil is very poor, unless you're fighting with the conditions of your soil and you're still in the beginning of the process, you didn't get a handle on the soil you grow on, or you really live in the area that does not have a good producing soil, then yes, maybe the same 10 plants of the Swiss chard would be good enough because they don't grow as big as here on a farming land. Same with other crops like zucchini, pumpkin, kale. I mentioned before the kale is overproducing here, especially tomatoes. On the most of plots I noticed here in this community garden, the overproduction was on the tomato plants. As a conclusion, I would like to ask you guys how we can plant consciously. How can we plant our gardens with the goal in mind so that the harvest that will be produced is enough for our family to be fed and enough to give as gifts to neighbors or to our friends, and like say let's use this experience of the overproduction to inspire our friends to grow their own food as well together with us. So invite your friends to join the movement to grow our own food. Cheers, guys. Thank you for watching. And please provide your comments down below. What do you think about this video? How much you have grown your harvest this year? Was it too much? Would you wish to plant it less, or it was not enough? You might want to plant more next year. And tell me which particular crops you would like to grow more and why. Again, thank you for watching. Cheers from Garden How To.